We're looking at God's goal, which is us living one as Christ lived with Him. And so we said that here's God, and all that He is there, and He flows through a divine umbilical cord into Christ, and we see who God is. And now, after He's conquered all things, He wants to connect us to Him and express exactly His life through us. The Christian life isn't difficult, it's impossible. The only man that ever lived it was Jesus, and the only way that we'll ever live it is if He's going to live it through us. Now there's one other thing that I'd say before we move away from this diagram, and just say it in passing, that as the flow of God comes this way through Christ and through me and into the world, and I express Him, there's also a flow of God where I can come back this way through Christ, through the doorway who is Christ, into the very presence of God and live there. Now, one of the things that we Christians have done is we let terms be stolen from us. So if we use the term meditation, we're going to have a lot of problems, because immediately we're thinking about transcendental meditation and the Hindus and what all that means. But the Bible tells us to meditate on the Lord day and night. What does that mean, to meditate on Him? And again, why do I let the Hindus steal my terms? We're the ones that thought of it. They shouldn't be the ones stealing it. But there is a divine flow back into Him that I have access through this one mediator between God and man, that man, Jesus Christ. And we don't have time to look at it. We're not going to spend a lot of time there. But one of the things we can do in our prayer time is to come back to Christ and let Him bring me into the very presence of God where there is perfect peace. Do you know that's a beautiful place to go? And in that place you can pray for everybody you know in probably under 30 seconds. Because He knows what you're going to say before you say it, and you know the answer before He says it. And I can understand now why there's this moaning and groaning in the Spirit as we're in this place listening to Him. Now, I operate a little differently than other people. I don't go to the Bible for my message. I go to Him for the message, and then I go to the Bible as a witness to it. So I go to Him to confirm it. And the thing is, He isn't dead, is He? I mean, He really isn't dead. And He can teach you, and it's amazing the things that you can learn in His presence if you'll be quiet. There's a lot of things that I want to know about Jesus. And I'll spend a lot of time in this place just asking about Jesus. Who is He? What was He like? What did He do as a child? And it's a beautiful time in there. Now, I was showing this diagram to one fellow, and he said, well, this is meditation again, and transcendental meditation, and this is taking you into the presence of God, and there's so many ways that people are all going into God. And I said, brother, do you know that that diagram would get me killed in India? Because the Hindus are saying that all the rivers flow to the Ganges, or all the spokes go to the same wheel, and there's all these ways to get in there. I remember speaking in a Hindu factory, and the fellow had gone in to purchase some things, and he got really interested in what I was talking about, so he stopped the employees and had me share with them. And I had a great time sharing with him. When I got all done, he says, oh, well, we believe the same thing. You're just talking about a different way to get into to God. And I said, yes, we do believe the same thing, because we believe that all these spokes go to the same place, right? And he said, that's right. And I said, but here's the big difference. All of these spokes do go to the same place, and where they all go is hell. But I'm not talking about a spoke that sends me to hell. I'm talking about a life that brings me into the very presence of God. And in that place we can hear Him, we can learn, and we can have peace. And it's very nice to go in there and get refreshed and then come back out. And that's the place where the teaching really becomes alive to us. God's goal is not only to live His life through us, but to bring us back to Him so we can be one with Him. Now, we're looking again then that we want to stand in a system where we live as a one as, in a relaxed system where I'm not working for, but I'm working from. God wants to bring me to the place where that's the experience in my life. How is He going to do that? Now, in looking at that, we look at the purpose of life. And what is the purpose of life? Why are we here on this planet? Well, God created angels, and one day in His mind He started thinking about angels, and He snapped His fingers, and instantly an angel appeared before Him. And the angel stood there and looked at himself and said, I have glory. Did the angel have glory? Whose glory was it? Well, it was God's glory, but the angel was stealing it. And then an angel looks at another angel and says, why are we worshiping and serving God when we have glory? And now those angels got together, and heaven became hell. There was a great battle, and those angels were cast out. So now God is thinking in his mind that I'm going to make man. He snaps his fingers, and man appears. Now, if man would have been created in heaven, he would have noticed something, that he's exactly in the image of God. Beloved, it has not yet appeared what we shall be, but we know when we see him that we'll be exactly like him. It's going to be quite a revelation to find that out. If angels who were not like God took glory, what would man do in heaven who's created exactly in the image of God? How much glory would man take, and would heaven at that point become hell? Are you safe for heaven? So before you can go to heaven, you have to take a side trip to the earth. And what is the purpose of this fallen earth? Now, God created the earth. He knew what we were going to do to it. And this comes as a shock to a lot of people. There is no plan B in God's mind about anything. He's always had plan A. And so we've been taught this. I don't know where it comes. It just comes down the downspout, and we believe it. But that what God created in Adam was perfect. That Adam was exactly what God wanted, and Adam messed up. And so now he brought Jesus to patch up the mess and to bring Adam back into the relationship that he had with God before the fall. Have you ever heard that? Well, what he's bringing us into is not a relationship that Adam had before the fall. What he's bringing us into is something that's 13 times better, because he's bringing me into the relationship that the Son has had with him for eternity. So when I'm brought into Christ, I'm brought into Christ's relationship. That's why I don't believe this teaching, and you've heard this, that you're under a generational curse. Well, first of all, if you read that in context, God talks about that. I'll visit the sins of the fathers on the sons, and down and down and down. But then later on he says, I'm not going to do that. But if there is such a thing as a generational curse, as soon as you're in Christ, the curse is broken because you have a new lineage. Your lineage is in Christ. So you couldn't be in some kind of generational curse. But God has brought us into something much better that we looked at. He's brought us into the very life and participation of Christ. It's a better thing. Now, Adam was a man in transition. God hadn't created everything that he wanted there. He wanted to replace this life with his life and bring me in to Christ. This fallen earth is the womb in which the child of God is birthed. And it is the perfect place to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, which is me coming to the end of my humanism, my humanity, my own strength. This fallen earth is to knock a few things out of me. Now, if you're standing in this system, your life may be a complete failure. And when you've been listening to the pyramid teaching and what it takes to be pleasing to God, and the behavior that it takes and the performance that it takes, you look at your own life and you go, I'm wiped out. But if you'll stand in this other system and see what the earth is really supposed to accomplish in you, you may be doing a lot better than you ever dreamed you were doing. Because the purpose of life on earth is to lose my kingdom, to lose my glory, to lose my image, to lose my strength, and to lose my righteousness. Because it's not until I lose those things that I'll be safe for his kingdom to flow through me, his glory to flow through me, what his life is to flow through me, his strength to flow through me, and his righteousness to flow through me. So how well are we going at losing those things? It's an interesting thing that God works in order, and we rarely do. In our humanity and in our own mind, we've decided what the problem is in our lives. And I've found after 20 years of counseling that very few people are fighting the battle where the battle really is. They've determined what the problem is, and they don't really know what the problem is. But God always works in order. So I use this example that I went to Ukraine. I usually don't call from there because it's too expensive. But I had a new phone calling plan, and I called Betty every day from Ukraine. I was there nearly a month. Well, when I got home, she wasn't that happy to see me because she had the phone bill, and it was $1,000. Now, I got to the thing, and it was $7.50 a minute for the phone calls. So I went back to Ukraine, and I told the people in the church that story. $7.50 a minute. This is a place where a doctor makes $25 a month. When they get paid, if they get paid. Dave's been there with us. And they're amazed at how much this cost. But they were even more surprised when I invited everyone in the church to call me. And you can call me collect as often as you want to, and I'll pay for it. This is about 500 people. Well, I told everybody to get out your pencil. I'm going to give you the phone number. I want you to write it down. A lot of you have never made an international call. Go ahead and make it. It's a lot of fun. Look at a map. You're in Ukraine, and here's the U.S., and you're talking to Mike in the U.S. You have a lot of fun doing that. Then I gave him the number. In my number, there's 10, there's a 2, there's 3 3s, a 5, an 8, a 7, and a 9. Call me whenever you want. How many phone calls did I get from Ukraine? I didn't get any. Now, I gave that challenge in India, and I did get one. Well, I don't know how they sorted that out. But the problem was, I'd given them the numbers, but I hadn't given them the right order of the numbers. And order is everything to God, and He's working in order. And the number one thing in God's order is not the battle of good against evil. The number one thing in God's order is my glory fighting against His glory. He wants to free me of glory. In Isaiah 42:8, He will not give His glory to another. I am another, so I'm a threat to the glory of God. And as long as I'll take His glory, I'm not a safe person. You know, I like this when people say, God, if you do this or that, we'll give you the glory. Well, I didn't know He lost it. I didn't know He was looking for it. I didn't know that you could give it to Him. He hasn't lost it. And where I hold my image, I'm a threat to God because I'll use the things around me for my image. I will not use them for the glory of God. Do you know, one day the Lord revealed to me, and it was one of those things that I didn't think I would pull out of. We all think that we're going so well because certain behavior is all in line and we don't have any of the evil going on. And I was at a point in my life where I thought everything was lined out. I was doing perfectly well. There wasn't any evil in me. All my thoughts were right. Everything was perfect. And then the Lord just took me aside and showed me how much glory I took. And that glory taking is what made Satan, Satan. And when I saw that in Revelation, I went down. Betty saw me when I got off the plane and she said, "Are you sick?" And I said, "I wish I was." Because I could see what a threat to God I'd been, standing in pulpits, watching the flow of God, watching Him witness to others, watching Him making changes in people's lives and me taking the glory. Do you know the bravest man in the world is a man that'll witness to what Christ is doing in another and take the credit himself? This got to be the bravest man in the world. And as I looked at that in my own life and saw it from His eyes, and you could only do it in Revelation, I saw that what I was doing was worse than any homosexuality. It was worse than any people in drunkenness. It was worse than drugs. It was worse than any of those things. It was me taking the glory. And how much that glory taking and image building had affected my family and others around me. Well, see, the purpose of life is for me to lose those things, to get rid of them. And so how's He going to do that to me? Well, the first thing is, I've got to lose this image and wanting to build images. Now, the Christian life to me is incredibly simple. It can be summed up in 13 words in Genesis 5:24, where it just simply says this, that Enoch walked with God and was not. So what do we have to do? Where do we lose life? We lose life when we don't walk with God. But if you walk with God, it's not going to be becoming somebody. It's going to be disappearing. But we've been taught that it can be becoming someone. But if you're going to walk with God, you're going to disappear and you're going to lose your glory. So Enoch walked with God, and walking with God is a simple thing. And we read the story in 2 Kings where Elisha's going along and he meets a woman. And she said, my husband was a prophet like you. You remember the story. And now he's gone. The creditors have come. They're going to take my sons. I'm in a fix. And he said, well, go get all the vessels you can and bring them to the house. So the boys went out and got them. And all she had was a little bottle of oil. And he began to fill those vessels. Now, it's an interesting thing. When he'd filled all the vessels, he said, are there any more? And they said, they're not anymore. Do you really believe there weren't any more? In the whole village and the whole surrounding territory and the whole place, there weren't any more vessels? There had to be more vessels, but why didn't they have any more? Did they get tired? Were they unbelieving? Were they wondering why they were doing this? But it says an interesting thing, that when they brought the last vessel, the oil stopped. Do you know that I have to bring this vessel, and all God requires out of me is emptiness? When God is looking for someone, He's looking for an empty person. You cannot put water in a full glass. Now, when you're arguing with someone and you're trying to share the things of Christ with them, and they know everything and all there is to know, you're just trying to deal with a full cup. You can't put anything in a full cup. But isn't it a wonderful thing that God requires of you, and when He's dealing with you, all He wants is emptiness, and you being able to say that I can't, that I don't have it in me, that I don't have any contribution, that I'm not going to be able to do this. If you don't show up, I'm in trouble. That's all He wants. And so with walking with Him is very simple. It's getting up in the morning, and before I ever get out of bed, I say, Jesus, I have no contribution, and you're welcome here. You've got to come and be to me everything that I'm not today. Enoch walked with God, and then he was not. You're going to become a not if you want to walk with Him. And He's putting us in situations where we are constantly losing our glory and our image. And He's doing it through family, and He's doing it through kids, and He's doing it through failures. So I'll get rid of the thing that I should have never, ever been holding on to. Now, one story that ministered to me the most, and God's continued to use in my life, is when the prophets are going along, and one of them complains to Elisha that everyone has a house but us. And he says, okay, we'll get our house. We'll build a house. And the prophet's down by the river, and he's cutting the logs, and his axe head falls off. Well, a prophet knows something that many other people know, that steel in the Bible represents the power of God, and wood represents humanity. And if you have the power of God, you chop through human problems. You've seen it happen. But if you lose your steel, the power of God, all you'll have is an axe handle, which represents wood, which represents humanity, which represents your problems, to bang at the world's problems. And all you'll do is make a lot of noise. And so he cried out to Elisha, and he said, what am I to do? And Elisha said this, God will give you back your power, but you got to point to where you lost it. When you lose all your power and you're living in the power of humanity, where did you lose it? You got to point to the place where you lost it. It doesn't do any good to point anywhere else. See, doesn't it sound a lot better for me to say this to you? Betty made me mad. Betty made me mad. Today, Betty made me mad. But here's the reality of it. I fell out of God. I fell away from God today, fell out with Him. I got up in the morning with my mind on myself. I let Betty offend me when I need to be offended until I can't be offended. And then she insulted me. And so I surrendered my peace to Betty. And I'm looking to Betty to make me happy now again. That's the reality of the story. But doesn't it sound better that Betty made me mad? That the fellow cut in front of me in the car, he's the one that made me mad? When I'm really the one who's surrendering my peace to those situations. So I get up in the morning and I'm angry. Betty doesn't cuddle me like I want her to. She doesn't talk to me the way I want her to. And so I stomp out of the house to punish her. Squeal the tires and drive off. And you've heard me tell this story. I'm cursing to all the drivers as I go along. Then I start cursing the fog, but it's not fog at all. It's condensation from all my cursing. And then I remember there's therefore now no condensation for those that are in Christ Jesus. And I get down to the office and I want to make copies, but we don't have any copy paper. Well, you wouldn't have any for me, not for Mike. I'm running the place, but you wouldn't have any for me. And there's idiots. Just have to work with idiots. Then you go down to the copy shop and you got a 16-year-old telling you what kind of copy you need. He's an expert. He doesn't know anything. He's an idiot. More idiots out there driving. You come home at night, you stomp into your room. I go past Betty. I don't talk to her. I'm eating supper by myself. I wait till she's asleep and in bed, and then I go into the bedroom, slam the door, turn the lights off and on, slam the drawers, dive into the waterbed, and try to create a riptide that throws her out. And then how many times have us men done this? You lay in bed and go clear to the edge of the bed because you're not even going to let your back touch the defiled woman. I mean, you're going to punish her that much. And I may never have sex again. I just may never not. I'm going to punish her to that level. And you're laying there so satisfied in what you're doing and punishing them. And then the Lord whispers to you, I want to tell you a story. Well, I love stories. What story do you have? Well, a fellow owed one fellow just a few dollars. Or $1 million. He owed him $1 million. And he forgave it. But he wouldn't forgive just a little bit. Well, now I don't feel so good. Because I know that he's forgiven me so much and I can't forgive Betty this little bit because of image and glory and pride and self. Now, when I wake up in the morning, I want to get my power back. I've lost it all. Where do I go to get it? Should I confess this to the pastor? Should I tell the fellows at the men's Bible study? Where did I lose my power? Was it on the road? Was it in the coffee store? Was it at the office? Was it laying in bed that night? No, I lost it in front of Betty. If I want to get it back, where do I have to go? Back to Betty. But it's only glory and pride that makes me not want to go back there. But I'm hanging on to something that's going to make me miserable. Now, it's no fun to do, and I remember the first time I did it. It feels like you've got concrete blocks on your feet, and you go into the kitchen dragging those things, and you've got to hug this person and apologize to them, and yet they were the one that was rude to you. And so I put my arms around her, and I give her a big hug, and I say, I love you, and I'm sorry for the way I acted yesterday. And Betty's response was, well, I'm glad you finally came to your senses. I'm sick and tired of you acting like a little kid. I wish you'd just grow up. I just picked up my steel and I'm ready to throw it down again. But I don't want to go through all that again. And so I stand there for a while stammering and finally take another step forward and gave her a hug and a kiss and said, you're right. I really was stupid. And right then there's the break when we lose our glory and our pride. And it feels so good. Do you know this self-protection makes us so miserable because if you think of yourself as a rock, can you move a rock with a stick? With an iron pole, could you move it? No, something's missing. What is it? Yeah, you got to have a leverage point here. Do you know that people walk around you all day with a steel pole and they want to move you? And they're always looking for that leverage point where they can move you. And the only place that they can move you is where you hold your glory. And if you don't hold it, nobody can move you. I was driving the other day, and in Denver, it's a nice place to drive because if you put on your blinker, everyone speeds up so you can't get in. So you've got to cut in if you want to cut in because you're not going to get in with a blinker. A blinker says cut the guy off. And so people zip in and out like this. And I zipped in front of a guy. We stop at the light and he gets out and he is mad. And he comes to the window and is pounding on it. And I hit the electric window and the thing comes down. And before he can curse me, I said, I'm an idiot. I shouldn't even be allowed to have a driver's license. I said, did you notice how I'm driving? I said, nobody's safe with me on the road. I said, it's ridiculous, man. And I said, the thing is, I got to get some mirrors or some bigger mirrors or something because I'm cutting in front of people like you and I'm not even seeing you. I said, have you ever seen anybody drive like me? And the fellow standing at the window, can't say I have. I said, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I said, and I get mad at my wife because she's telling me how to drive and drive and drive. I told Betty the other day, I said, hey, when we get to this next place, I'm going to shout myself a beer. have a little celebration. She said, why? And I said, because I made it here. You didn't think I could make it. You had to tell me how to turn, where to go, turn on the blinker, get there. Oh, you're going to hit that. I said, I'm an idiot, man. And he said, yeah, that's right. Well, be careful. I said, hey. I said, mate, you're the one that's got to be careful with me on the road. I don't know what else to do. If you own that, nobody can control you. A fellow came up to me in New Zealand, and he pulled me aside, and he says, I don't think you're very holy. I don't even think you ought to be in ministry. I said, brother, you don't think I'm holy? Come here. Do you know that last night I was laying in bed trying to figure out how to kill the people in baggage claim? I said, I got here to New Zealand and people had broken into my bag, and not only that, they tore the whole bag up. And I said, I'm trying to figure out how I could beat them up, how I could do something. And I said, I know some guys that are drug dealers that work in baggage claim in the U.S. Maybe they'd know someone that could come over and beat these guys up. That fellow's just staring at me. I said, you don't think I'm holy? I said, that's the least of my problems. You want to know what else I was thinking last night? And he goes, no. When people tell you you're stupid, tell them you're an idiot. When they tell you you're a fool, you tell them you never met anybody as stupid as you. What are you trying to protect anyway? And where we hold this image and this glory, people will continue to rule over us, and it's absolutely no fun. Now, when God is teaching you this lesson of you losing your glory, keep in mind that you've got to be offended until you don't want to be offended anymore, until you can't be offended anymore. That there is an underground lab in New Mexico that is cloning people who are very offensive, and they come out at night and they have your name on a 3x5 card and they're looking for you. And they line up to offend you where you're holding your glory, and you can choose which one you're going to let offend you. The first one, the 5th one, the 10th one, the 20th one, it's all up to you. How long do you want your misery to go on? I would love to see a church that just had a simple sign above it that said this is a church where you cannot offend. Wouldn't that be beautiful? See, people don't want to come to me for counseling, and you can see why. Because after they tell me what a person's done to them and the injustice of it and how bad it is, I want to know why they lost their peace and why they're offended by it. Do you know that's actually become a thing in the church today, that it's a positive to go to someone and say, you've offended me? To go to the pastor and say, you've offended me? How did that ever become a positive? Oh no, I don't want to offend you. You're God. And if you are offended, it's because you're living out of your flesh, you're living out of your humanity, and we're not living out of Christ. This world is the perfect place to beat this out of me. And the home and marriage is even a better place, isn't it? That I lose those things there, but I should have never been holding on to it. I'm like the Jews with the pigs, and when they lost them, they're mad, and they're not even supposed to have them. And I wasn't ever supposed to have that. Now, another thing that I have to lose is my pride. And we'll take a little break and come back to that. All right?